of things. He's actually, you were a Navy veteran, according to your bio. And so everybody, a round of applause for our first speaker on track one.
We need to drink more beer, right? It's Saturday morning, so just to give you a heads up, I just flew in. I got in at 2:30 this morning, so I may stumble, and I will tell all of you that I just made this all up. We're going to play buzzword bingo today. So a little bit about myself. I'm an Iowa farm boy. My mother did not love me, as you can tell by the red plaid shirt. While I have a lot of certifications in different security aspects, I did come from a technical side. This is sitting in my basement at my home office. My wife hates our power bill. I am prior Navy. I spent a lot of time with the Marines working for deployed. Do we have any other veterans in the room? Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your service. So I'm one of those people that started out in information security because I was curious about how things worked. And it's not just information security, but all technologies. How do they work? I think a lot of us in here have that same tinkering knowledge of they want to find out the why. I'm also a big science fiction guy. I love sci-fi. I'm the guy in the white. As I said, I'm certified in the security of things. However, most of my certifications tend to be on the business aspect and looking at security from we're getting some wicked feedback, based around the business aspects. I worked with a project here recently called Davix, which was the data analysis and visualization Linux distribution, which is basically taking a lot of information and making lots of pretty pie charts and graphs and social network analysis. And while I don't know everything, I will get you the answer. So if somebody has a question and I can't get to it today, my contact information will be up at the end. Please feel free to harass me, stalk me, name it. So what we're going to talk about today is what I've termed APT squared. Now I know a lot of you are going like, oh, well, just another buzzword. Well, what we're going to dive into is the business aspects as well as some of the aspects of building a resiliency program to protect our organizations from advanced persistent threats through adaptive penetration testing. So let's take a quick look at the history of hacking. So back in '68 when the internet started, actually '69 is when it started, but we had the progression through, and we actually had your hardcore hackers. These are the folks that were interested by, or had that intrinsic influence around technology, and they wanted to know why. How did systems work? How did they function? How are they interconnected? Well, as we went through the years, what we ended up seeing is, come about 2008, we started seeing criminalization of the internet. So, long story short, it's 2014. This is no more. Hollywood has romanticized the hacker. Great, good deal. A lot of businesses still feel that this is what they're being attacked by. So, attackers are using computers too, just like they do in business, just like we use them in our aspect, they use them as well. Criminal syndicates and attackers are running just like a business. They have their executive teams, they have their distribution, they have everything that we do. They're just illegitimate. Long story short, if you're in business, you're a target. Criminal organizations want your systems, and it's not always for the reasons that we think. Criminal organizations value our IT assets a little bit differently than we do. So when a system becomes attacked, this is what they're looking at doing. Everything from taking over for nefarious purposes and using that so that way they can leverage and gain money, because that's what they want to do. Nobody does anything out of the goodness of their heart unless they can capitalize on it, right? So all of these aspects that go into that our organizations face on a daily basis are aspects that we need to be prepared for and be able to answer to leadership how we are handling and addressing these. When an organization comes under attack, whether it's through a commodity exploit or being targeted specifically, it is our job as security practitioners to ensure that we have the ability to defend and being able to demonstrate that we are taking every aspect that we can and taking every effort that we can to protect our organizations. Now, how many of you work for organizations where you have unlimited resources and you have the full staff that you absolutely need? One. No? Don't mess with me. I have like 0 sleep, so I'll take you seriously. So ultimately, what is this all about? All the stuff that they're doing. Can anybody tell me? Bingo. Give that guy a beer. You said it first? Money? We'll have you two duel it out and we'll entertain everybody. It's all about the money. So let's talk a little bit about what an advanced persistent threat is. Now, malware, everybody everybody know what malicious software is? Yes, kind of, maybe. One of the key things that I can say regarding advanced persistent threats is that the individuals who are doing this, you have somebody that is motivated enough to invest the time and effort against you. This is not a piece of software. This is somebody behind the keyboard that's coordinating events to attack your organization. Coming into the aspects of adaptive penetration testing, this is including the entire spectrum, and we'll dive into this a little bit deeper, of how intrusions occur. Our organizations have gotten really good at protecting the perimeter from a technology standpoint. How many of you are in here to do penetration testing? Just a couple? One? What is the most surefire way to get into an organization? Just ask. The social engineering aspect. So the concept of this, after talking with a couple of colleagues of mine, was, okay, let's take a look at what the criminal elements are actually doing. If you've ever gone through a pen test and you've had your HR and legal come back and say, that's too realistic, you can't do that, you're doing it right. Because the organization needs to realize that an attacker is going to find a way in. The question is how difficult we can make it. Did you all see Dave Kennedy's presentation earlier? Did he talk about the purple team? He did not talk about the purple team. Great concept. Love Dave. Everybody get your hugs from Dave? No? I got my hug. Sure. No. And actually, here's something real quick. So when we talk about playing by the rules, let's make no mistakes. Anybody in here subject to HIPAA? High tech? Here's one. PCI? Oh, great. Cool. So HIPAA, high tech, PCI, pretty much any regulation that's out there, they give you the opportunity. They make those standards freely available to download, right? Now, knowing American businesses and businesses in general will only do the bare minimum. Do you think that those controls are going to be effective if they come under an active attack? Anybody? So, from a criminal aspect, what you've basically done, and what the Security Standards Council done, Health and Human Services, NIST, they've given me the playbook of what you're going to do. For those of you who deal with PCI, what does the data standard actually apply to? Any system that does what? Correct. So we do this thing in business where we scope it out because HR doesn't use or handle cardholder data, right? So are those same controls going to apply in that environment? No. So guess what? As an attacker, where's my first attack going to actually be launched at? HR, sales, any number of those areas. I know the playbook. I'm not going directly after the toxic data. So here are some rather infamous quotes that I've actually heard people tell me during pen testing. And by no means am I like on par with Dave Kennedy or Ed Scotus or any of those guys. I just look pretty and ask questions, and people answer and give me things. You know, I call up. One of the best ruses that we will do during a pen test is we'll do user-directed action. And if the call aborts because the individual is getting nervous or they don't want to give out their password, we'll wait about 15 minutes and then call them back. And, you know, it's Ed calling from the incident response team. At least that's what the caller ID says. And we will let them know, saying, hey, listen, we understand that you came under attack. What information did you give them? Did you give them up your IP address? Did you give your username and password? No? Okay, we need you to do this. We need you to fill out an incident response form. Go out to this website, log in, and provide the details for us, please. I'll stay on the line with you and help you and answer any questions. That always works, because now I'm there to help them. Anybody ever hear any of these? I love the we trust our employees. We trust our employees. So one of the things that I did early on as a pen tester that I'm not allowed to do anymore was getting people hired into the organization. Now, when we do things like that, we're doing a protracted engagement. It's to find out if they're doing the right thing. So, you know, are they doing and conducting background checks? Well, in one case they didn't, because they would have seen that they were tied to the same company that they had hired to do their pen test. And he got hired on as an IT administrator. That was like the easiest pen test we ever did. If you're going to let us in the door, cool. So what we're looking at here is a breakdown between, you know, your hacktivism, your actual APTs, and your commodity threats. Now, your commodity threats are basically, we haven't patched the system, and somebody manages to run Metasploit and Nessus against your system, and, ooh, they've owned you. Very loud. Hacktivism, what they're looking at doing is making a name for themselves. And each one of these areas reflects. Now, out of these 12 different areas, we can't control definition of the target. If somebody targets us, we're in the crosshairs. We can't control whether or not they get accomplices. Hey, Bubba, what are you doing Saturday? Let's go break into a bank. We cannot control whether or not they build and acquire the tools that are needed to break into our organizations. And we cannot control the research target. We can't control how much time they put in and invest to break into us. However, the remaining aspects, from testing to covering tracks, that's all internal to our business. Those are internal to our organizations. Now, why is this important? Well, because it's 2014, and we've created this perfect storm. We used to be little islands, and then we got like kind of ingrained with the internet because businesses like to make money, so everybody throws up an e-commerce site or a pay portal, or they work with their supply vendors, they work with different organizations so they can generate money. Again, businesses are in businesses to make money. Well, again, as we go through, we have to realize that the threat is not just focused on the technology. Now, a lot of folks, a lot of vendors out there will tell you, well, we've got this new whiz-bang appliance and it's got flashy lights and it'll solve all your problems. When I was working with a retailer, I had a vendor came in and said, this appliance will secure your network, it'll solve all your problems, it'll meet PCI compliance requirements. And I said, great. So when is it going to start writing my policies? It doesn't do that. Well, then you just lied. Get the hell out of my office. I need to go to more Dale Carnegie classes, I am aware. So we have all these different types of attack vectors. Again, going back to the business aspect. So again, for those of you who are not familiar with pen testing in a business organization, most organizations will focus solely on that one system, that one small environment. And that's what your shot is at. You know, this is what we want you to test. And oh, by the way, your maintenance window that you're doing this in is between 3 and 3:15 in the morning. And we don't want you to down it. And if you find a vulnerability, please don't exploit it, but make it look like we've actually done something. What they neglect is to realize that that is just one component in an overall system. Those systems' interactions, how they operate, how they function, are not autonomous. They all interact. I don't think I've met a business yet in the last number of years that isn't some way, shape, or form connected to another system. Again, I can attack an HR, legal, marketing, and pivot into a network and cause some hate and discontent. So, reality 101 when it comes to attackers. So they don't care about compliance. You gave us the rule book. We just don't care if this is your scoped environment, cool. If that makes you feel better, great. Attackers don't really care about maintenance windows. You know, they're going to attack you 24/7 if they so desire. The criminal syndicates will invest the time and effort that they need to be able to get in. And a lot of the times, it's a lot easier to get in than most people think. So the rationale that we developed, and it was a collaborative effort with a number of colleagues of mine, was taking from base zero and identifying ways to attack an organization and successfully penetrate them. So, of course, we've got the standard people aspect. Then you have this thing called processes. And this is where I think as an information security community and within business that we struggle and have the hardest time with. So within information security, you have things like configuration management, patch management, vulnerability management, but we're not managing those like we should be. As you add more complexity into an environment, there's more and more problems that can occur that can get overlooked. And then you have the technology side. Now, the technology is going to do exactly what you tell it to do. If you tell it IP any on your firewall, guess what? It's going to allow IP any. It's going to allow all of that traffic to come inbound. Then we started looking at, from those three tiers, where do we start looking at for attacks? What is the best way to get into the organization? So from an external side, and internal. Those are really your two primary threat surfaces. Either somebody from the inside or somebody from the outside. We won't focus so much on the internal because we trust our employees, right? And then we start talking about blended attacks, water holing, trusted vendors. Can anybody give me an idea of a trusted vendor that was exploited recently? Who said Target? Target's HVAC company. Now, in the Internet of Things, they were doing something that was business smart, and that they were allowing, IP-enabled management of their HVAC system. Didn't end well for Target. Target's still making money. Target's still in business. One of the unique things that happened with Target, though, we all pretty much knew that when the news broke about Target, who was going to be the first person to go? The CIO. That's what they get paid the big bucks for. They take the hit. What was unexpected was seeing that the CEO was then asked to leave. So that's starting to get people's attention that this might be a little important. Third-party support. Your cleaning crew. I love the cleaning crew aspect. And my background predominantly, like I said, in pen testing is that social engineering aspect. Or is what we like to call, shooting fish in a barrel. Going in as a cleaning crew member and inserting hardware into an organization. Whether it's a keystroke logger on the back of a system, because we all check that every time we go in. Setting up cameras, taking over the existing infrastructure's security cameras and watching people type their passwords in. Life's a lot easier. The entire intent of that is once we get those credentials, What do compromised credentials look like on the network when you're logging into something? What's that? Normal user, thank you. So the entire purpose of why we came up with this is to provide business value. Now, is it pretty when you explain to somebody that we've just seized control of your entire network? That's not going to be a good day for them. Because a lot of times do our managers and do our executive leadership actually know what has happened? How bad or how stable or how resilient our organization is to these type of attacks? It tends to get filtered from the folks that are actually, boots on the ground to by the time it gets up to management. So this is nothing new. This is going from passive operations. This is your intelligence gathering. This is getting information about the organization. It's really interesting to see how many organizations are willing to talk to a student journalist. I'm 40, and I'll put on a badge that says I'm a student journalist, and I will get invited into an organization, and they will give me like carte blanche access and tours, and they'll show me their new data center, and often they'll leave me alone. The key aspect when we talk about these is that precise strike. When we hit, we want to make sure that we're in. So for those of you who've ever gone through like a vulnerability assessment, anybody in here never run Nessus or Nexpose? Couple? They're not quiet tools. They'll sound the alarm. But they're also indicative of if you run a Nessus scan against an organization and they don't see it, that's a lot that you can pull away from that. Because you know that from the fact that they have not responded, they probably aren't watching their logs, they do not have an incident response program in place, or they're trying to figure out what just happened. So we'll take a case study real quick. Business missing the boat. So when you talk to the business about, your new web application that you're launching, they're really excited. They had their best engineers who developed it. I love this. We plan for every possible contingency. I remember working with a senior developer after we had exploited his web app, and when we showed him what we actually did, his response and his defense was, well, that's not how the application's supposed to be used. You're right. That's not how you intended it to be used. However, for me, that's exactly what I needed it to do to be used. So yeah, it worked worked very well for me. It could never happen to us. That happens to everybody else. That company gets breached, not us. Has anybody ever heard that one before? Couple of nods, couple of shakes, yeah. This is the one I love. We're compliant. Cool, you spent a lot of money to be told that you met the bare minimum. So this is an actual case study from an organization, and I will tell you right now that when this happened, computers were not around, because this was all associated with the Titanic. White Star Lines had underestimated the threat to their organization, or to their ship. And it impacted badly. However, they were actually compliant with the regulations. They were actually over-compliant. Yay, we're good. Now, if a shipbuilding company can underestimate an iceberg, which I don't believe has an IQ more than 3, I could be wrong, when our organizations are under attack by somebody who's motivated, funded, and has an expressed intent to get in, what are our chances of actually surviving that type of attack? So what we looked at doing is moving away from the compliance-focused attacks. We're not about checking boxes. We want to give you a realistic aspect. We want to tell you, this is how we broke in. This is how we were able to get things like your information out of your organization. This is what could have prevented it. This is what you actually need to do. So from the aspect of compliance-based, you have, and any of the technical folks in here who haven't worked into the business side, this information is what we like to talk about because we're technical. We like to talk about vulnerabilities. But when we're talking to the business, it doesn't come off that well because the business already has answers to this. They're like, so what? So we patch. Ooh, we were able to compromise a laptop. It has encryption. And I kid you not, I'm working with a client right now that has whole disk encryption. And I will show this to anybody who doesn't believe me afterwards, that when you power it on, it does not ask you for a password. It just boots right into Windows. Wow. Is that being secure? Maybe not. Ooh, domain admins. We all want to be domain admin, right? Because domain admin is God. Well, just change your password and it's behind a firewall and, done. So what we've ended up doing is basically, telling them a bunch of bad things that they didn't understand. So what we started doing is start talking in business terms. So instead of telling them 2,500 vulnerabilities, now we got your customer database. Oh. We have your board minutes. Now, having sit on a couple of boards, I know some of the comments that we make and discuss. I don't want those being public. And that starts getting their attention. Oh, we have your intellectual property and trade secrets. That's what I call your shit moment. I have to give this presentation to executives, so I have to spell things out for them sometimes. I don't think I'm in the same forum that I am, so I can be a little bit more loose-lipped. We have your merger and acquisition information. Guess which one this one is? This is your oh fuck moment of how did you get this? Now, why is this important? Does the business understand bits and bytes? No. Can they equate that to a dollar volume? Do they know how much this costs? Absolutely. They understand that. So part of what you want to do is make sure you educate and inform them. So and I'm giving a very high level of this. So when we do our engagements, we engage with the marketing department, sales department, and find out how much time went into getting that type of information. And then it becomes, your employees that you trust say that this database is worth X amount of dollars. Because if I got the customer database, and usually I can find, in addition to this, I can find and see what pricing is that you're giving to clients, which if I'm into this thing that we don't want to talk about corporate espionage, if I can cut 10 to 15% off of your price and still make a profit, am I going to be able to get some of your customers? Well, to a degree, yes, up until the point that they pull in their general counsel. And then their general counsel is going to use all sorts of terms that they don't understand because legal is like IT to them. They understand the need for it. They don't always want them around, though. And I have seen some very creative lawyers position language around that, like, well, it's not a breach. You do not have physical custody of the systems and they're sitting in the Ukraine. Well, we don't know if we've lost data. You've lost physical control of the systems. It's sitting in Kiev, but it's secure. No, it's in a chicken coop is what it is. The easiest way that I have discovered is when you start talking that dollar volume to them, they understand that relatively quickly. So again, moving away from the compliance aspect, getting the canned reports, being told about risk from whatever tool they're using because that's what the tool says the risk is. Risk is inherent to the organization based upon a threat that it's feeling. So what we started looking at is what are the value adds of doing an actual APT squared type of attack? Well, we can actually demonstrate what we actually pulled out. Hey, here's your marketing forecast for next month. Here's your intellectual property. Here's your new patent. Here's a new merger and acquisition that you're doing down in Mexico. Process maturity. You don't have these areas in. So when we started identifying these, this is the formation of where we built the resiliency model out of. And again, I'm not going to say that it's the one end-all, be-all to resiliency models. It was just something we threw together so that way we could help organizations secure their organizations, secure their business. So real quick, we'll break through the taxonomy of an actual attack. Starting off at the very back on the left-hand side, email-based attacks, and working all the way through the physical intrusions. And in between, we have things like phone and wireless. Now, it's important to realize the value of this. So if I'm doing email-based and phone-based attacks, the cost to me as an attacker is going to be a lot less to acquire the information I'm looking for. As we progress, we're starting to see more and more of an investment on our part, and it's becoming more and more difficult. We're leaving trace elements behind. We're increasing our own internal risk to the organization and increasing our threat surface. If I have to step foot in the vicinity of a location, that's where I'm putting, as an attacker, I'm putting myself at risk because now most places have video surveillance. So now I'm on film somewhere or on DVD or DVR somewhere. So as my threat profile goes in, so this is great because depending upon how valuable that target is, I may work through the entire chain. Now, I also may change the attack methodology. So again, least amount of effort to the most amount of effort. If I can get the same, if I can compromise a network by sending an email, my job's done. I don't have to get overly creative. And to maintain that persistent network, I don't have to be on that system all the time. I just have to be able to be on there enough to maintain control. And again, it all comes back down to the Benjamins. It's going to cost me less to send an email than it is for me to put feet on the ground. Different kinds of attacks, and I'm not going to go into details, but and where's Rocky at? Will they make the presentation available? Does anybody know? Yes? Okay, cool. So I won't beleaguer all of this, but these are different types of methodologies and attack vectors that we've implemented as they go through each one of the different phases. And again, the key elements here are targeting the users, getting the user interaction. As we go through, everybody's got a secure software development lifecycle management policy, right? Your developers are trained to follow industry best practices, and they do peer review, and they're doing all these good things. And I usually ask the next question of who's actually been taught how to secure code securely. Well, nobody. They don't want to send the money to have us go to training. So great. Your peers who are focused on making sure that the application is available and functions accordingly, because security is not defined as a requirement, are reviewing your applications. Great, rock on. Again, operating systems, application services, those are the network-based attacks. Wireless, we're seeing a prevalence with smartphone-based attacks now. Classic man-in-the-middle type attacks. These are very common. Again, as we move up, though, my risk is actually increasing by putting feet on the ground. So while originally I might attack a corporate network by putting a man in the middle of there, I might watch the employees and see, where are they going? Are they going to Starbucks? Because Starbucks offers that free AT&T Wi-Fi, right? And that can't be cloned at all. That's proprietary information, right? So then getting into the physical intrusion side. And this is where the fun part comes in, at least for mine. My aspect. Getting into the organization, that's a little bit of a rush. And I love the fact that as a pen tester, you always want to make sure you get that get out of jail letter that's signed by the C-suite. However, I'll keep 2 copies of those. One that is actually signed by the CEO or the legal counsel or whoever my contact is with the organization. And then I'll have the other one that if I am stopped, I'll hand it over to him, and it goes to my buddy that's waiting for that call to come in that says he's authorized to do this. Please allow him access to the entire facility. That actually happened where we turned that over. They made the call. Security guard called in at like 11:30 that night. Sean answers the phone. And he's like, yeah, Ed's supposed to be there. In fact, can you do me a favor and have him, give him access to the data center? And the guy was like, sure. And I'm like, too easy. Exploiting the trust of an individual or an organization is awesome. It's also scary. So how do you actually address the advanced persistent threat? Find out what good is within your organization. How many of you know what your actual baseline is for your network and for your organization? What is good? I had one hand. Knowing what good is going to allow you to identify what the bad is. Moving through the continuous monitoring aspect. This is the again, management of what it is we do. And then actually running real world attacks. This doesn't mean sitting there pushing a button and walking away. This means figuring out where your exposures are that could lead to your organization's demise. Oh, I got it. That's great. So I don't know how well you can see this. Please feel free to download the slides. But this is actually what we started coming up with. Now, I come from a quant background. I like to quantify things. So if I send out a phishing campaign on 200 users, I can go back and say, 50%, 75% of your users have clicked the link, they got the Best Buy rewards card and compromised your network. Incident response plays into this as far as how that is employed. And again, these are very detailed and tied back directly to the various aspects that we defined in an actual adaptive the APT squared pen test model. Can any of you see this? Some, yes, no. This will be available, and I think I'm coming up on my time here shortly. It is an eye chart. 4th row, first letter. No. A. So as we walk through, and this will be available, I'll put it on my blog eventually as soon as I get some free time. But these are some of the things that you can take a look at within your own organizations to say, how do we make our organization better? And a lot of charts. Again, I've gone into management now, so I'm like all about the pie charts and histograms and all that stuff. Matrices. But that is pretty much it. Any questions? Feel free to contact me. Yes? We do. We have a couple of different areas that we'll do where things like exfiltration of data, where we will start exfiltrating data and see how long it takes, what files can we get out as far as how big they can be out. One of the guys that I worked with, his name is James Edge. This guy is a freak when it comes to networking. He managed to compromise a core router within an enterprise and managed to implement a GRE loop, which is a generic routing encapsulation. So basically, he took all their router traffic and sent it back to his data center. So now he's collecting all the data. Now, to give you an idea, that doubles your bandwidth going in and out of your organization by 100%. So you would think something like that would be identified, and it went right over their head. They did not see it. So things like that. And the key aspect is, what are those indicators that something bad just happened? Again, if you're transferring files to Uzbekistan and you don't have an office in Uzbekistan, you might want to look into it. Data that is available through our log sources that we can get are pretty much key indicators of something going on. In an incident response capacity, we actually got called in where we started looking at the logs, and we noticed that there was an account that had been under attack for 3 weeks. It was a god-awful number of password attempts, and then all of a sudden it arbitrarily stopped. What is that an indicator of? They found the password. And they didn't understand. And the way this actually all came about was, and I don't have all the full details, the way it came about, the user tried to log in, and he was like, my password doesn't work. Well, they had actually gone in and reset his password. The attacker did. And they were just siphoning off information. Things like that. Seeing activity coming from like a Tor network endpoint. Is there any legitimate business reason a Tor network exit node should be talking to your network? Or a peer-to-peer network communicating? Absolutely, right? So, any other questions? School of Hard Knocks. No. I'm still trying to figure out how to get in there. So, I want to see if, not to steal the gold, I just want to see if there is gold. They don't have gold at Fort Knox anymore? So every couple of years, are there any security practitioners in here who get jaded and frustrated and think it's like time for a career change? It's in our... So every couple of years, I come up with an idea that I'm going to get out of InfoSec. And this year, I think, I'm not going to ever get out because I'm addicted to it. I came up with the idea that I was going to become a mobile bartender / ancient astronaut theorist. For the sheer purpose of, I could have made so much money off the Target breach, because the moment that they got breached, every one of their executives were drinking, and they knew that they were going to have to blame somebody. Enter the ancient astronaut theorist. It had to be the aliens. And of course, thank you very much. Everybody, let's go drink. Hello. All right.
Another announcement. This is still on? Yes. We just, quick PSA, we just